Bryn Athyn train wreck. When we wake up each morning, it is hardly with the expectation that this will be our last day. It was December 5th, 1921, 20 days before the celebration of Christmas. As you might expect, people are in an unusually jovial state with the anticipated big holiday looming ahead. The weather that day was cold and snowy. The line that the accident took place on was part of the Reading Railroad, not much farther than about 1.5 miles from the Bryn Athyn station, and it was given old and marginal equipment upon which to operate. Signals were not as up-to-date as they should be, and the coaches that many of the victims rode in were wooden and outdated. 27 people that left their homes that morning would not be returning that evening or ever again. 70 others had to be hospitalized as a result of the crash. There are those who would like to cast blame on the engineers and conductors of the respective trains, but truthfully, there's much blame to go around, as many failures prevented this from being just another ordinary day. Needless to say, if just a few things had turned around and turned out differently, this would never have happened, and life would have been drastically different, but that's not reality. The Newtown-Fox Chase line was part of the Reading Railroad. In those days, railroad trains were as numerous as buses are today. Passengers had to be taken to work in Philadelphia and brought home again at the end of the day. December 5th, 1921 was to be a day of infamy in the Reading Railroad annals. The time was shortly before 8 a.m. A steam locomotive, number 151, was informed by the station master at Huntington Valley to pull over into the siding at Bryn Athyn, as he was expecting two trains from the opposite direction to be following each other shortly. In 1921, there were no displayed signals inside locomotives. Visibility in a steam locomotive is extremely limited. The engineer looks out a little window, peering out at the right side of a boiler that is often 40 feet long. The brakeman does the same thing on the left side of the engine, and he, too, has a sense of tunnel vision. The conductor and engineer of train number 151 each misread the instructions, thinking that they had only to worry about one train, but not two. The snow was coming down fiercely at this point, and the first of the two trains had passed. The engineer and brakeman and conductor, none of the three, saw the stop signal because of the swirling snow. The station master at Bryn Athyn, Russell Clayton, got a call from the Huntington Valley station to make sure that number 151 was still in its place on the siding. Clayton looked and replied that 151 had left the station. Disaster was truly in the making. Station Master Clayton phoned the Woodmont station by Byberry Road to flag and stop 156 headed toward Philadelphia. Unfortunately, it was too late, as 156 was headed head-on at 65 miles an hour toward engine 151, which was also highballing at nearly the same rate. A head-on crash was imminent, and neither engine could see the other because of the curve, and it was too late. The trains met at a rocky cut, heretofore known as the Gulch. Each of the 440 Camelback engines became a weapon of mass destruction for the passengers contained within. The impact and physics thrust one of the engines over the other and flipped it. Burning coals and gas lights within the coaches made a sad funeral pyre for many of the occupants. What happened that day cannot be undone, but regulations soon changed that outlawed wooden coach cars from being used. As someone who studies history and is interested in paranormal events, I traveled to the site of the wreck at the Gulch to see if any residual psychic energy was present at the location. With the tools I had assembled, it seemed to be that something was amiss, as the temperature probe dropped 2 degrees at the former crash site. Additionally, EMF detectors seemed to show spikes of energy. It seemed as if some of the energy from the wreck might still be present somehow. It is important to remember that studying paranormal events, even in the year 2015, is still far from great science. The crude tools that we use to gather and analyze events are far from truly being space-age science. Though some may choose to ridicule and deride this information as being unscientific and fraught with many difficulties, there is a portion of this work that cannot be denied, even under scrutiny. As you are probably aware, our world is full of electromagnetic waves. These waves helped us communicate with our phones and through the television airways and radio and a myriad of other machines and devices. Since time immemorial, people have believed that our existence does not stop with the end of our mortal lives. This being said, spiritualists from the 19th century have tried to communicate with those who have passed on. And it is thought that if we were able to somehow filter out the extraneous electromagnetic waves flying through our midst, we might be able to somehow capture the essence of the folks who might have lived before. Using instruments such as K2 meters, tri-field meters, which measure magnetic, electric, and analog radio microwave energy to help quantify this source, but do not necessarily help us truly understand exactly what's happening. I always bring an electronic recorder capable of picking up audible frequencies down to 15 hertz. At the crash site, I looked around, and since it was located out of doors in a fairly heavily wooded area, I did bring a ghost box. Ghost boxes are scanning radios that purportedly can be used by spirits to assist in communication with the living. There's absolutely no guarantee that what you're going to get will be valid or scientific. Using an RT EVP recorder alone would have been a daunting task, given the fact that there was about a 10-mile-an-hour wind, trees rustling in the breeze, and birds chirping. Filtering out any kind of speech is nearly impossible. Also brought with me an EMF-1 research device, which has a geophone, EMF sensor, and temperature probe. I did videotape a portion of the interaction with my cell phone, Ghostbox, and MF1 tool. The results I obtained were especially unusual because I picked up what seems to be a cry for help and other site-related words and phrases that could only be deemed valid because they refer to the accident scene which occurred here on December 5th, 1921. When you listen to these audio and video clips, please understand that there has been no attempt at all to alter or change the content to coincide with any viewpoints that I have on the subject. I'm also aware of the fact that there is something called pareidolia, which is a psychological phenomena involving a stimulus, an image or sound wherein the mind perceives a familiar pattern of something where none actually exists. Common examples are perceived images of animals, faces, or objects in cloud formations, the man and the moon. Humans are quite good at picking up reported shapes and objects in their lives. As a matter of fact, it's probably helped mankind survive, as they are able to pick up and interpret things slightly differently, and sometimes even better. It's possible that I am overstating or hearing things that really don't exist. Listen for yourself and decide.
My name is Steve. I've always wanted to live here.